Hello and welcome to Focus on Gaza. I'm Imran Garda. On the program this week, breaking the blockade. They've driven thousands of kilometers to get here, but how far will the aid go? Israeli activists get animated over the plight of Gazans under siege. And we spend a day out at sea with a Gazan fisherman who risks life and limb to feed his family. It's been an eventful week in Gaza. More tunnels were pummeled by Israel's army. Do the large craters reflect a hollow peace? From enmity to unity, rival Palestinian factions continued talks, but with little sign of a breakthrough. And defending their own flesh and blood, the family we followed throughout the war, the Samounis, sue the Israeli government for the loss of 29 of their relatives. 23 days after embarking on their journey, a group of British volunteers finally arrived in Gaza. Their convoy included medical supplies, clothing, food and toys, but also 20 ambulances, 2 buses, a fire engine and a fishing boat. But will these gifts, however generous, make any difference to the people of Gaza? Todd Burr, who witnessed the arrival of the convoy, reports.
It was a moment of anticipation not seen here in months. After a day and a half of waiting on the Egyptian side of the Rafah border, the gates finally opened. The so-called Lifeline for Gaza, or Viva Palestina convoy, crossed into Gaza to a hero's welcome.
I just cannot believe that I'm here in Gaza. I feel that I'm at home now. I feel that I'm home. I've waited for this for a long time, for a long time.
It was slow going and a long road traveled. The convoy left London in mid-February and drove 7,000 kilometers through Europe and North Africa to get here. A persistent effort to deliver tons of humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza as they struggle to rebuild their lives after Israel's 22-day offensive.
I think it says people power can work, and I think it says that peaceful direct action is the way to break the chains that surround Gaza.
After a short celebration, the convoy made its way north on the road from Rafah to Gaza City. If this was a marathon, the vehicles were the runners, and hundreds of deliriously delighted people lined the streets to cheer them on.
I can't describe how happy I feel that these people came to take care of us and to see our situation and the destruction that has been done by the Israeli occupation.
Mohammed Al-Mannouma joined the convoy from the very beginning in London. He journeyed with 3 others who he had never met before, but along the way they became fast friends. His dedication to the cause forced him to take a leave from his job and be separated from his wife and 2 young children for nearly a month.
To actually be here and see it with your own eyes and see the people with your own eyes, that just fills you up. I mean, that fills you up with so much emotion. You know, it's, as you can see from my speech, it's just hard to contain.
About 300 volunteers in all traveled in ordinary buses, just like the one I'm sitting in right now. They also came in ambulances and many other vehicles. Over my shoulder here, you can see the humanitarian aid they brought with them. The food, the clothing, the blankets, and the medicine. More than 100 vehicles in all allowed to cross the border, and every last one of them will be staying right here in Gaza. But what to do with all of these vehicles is a big question. Most are designed for driving in Europe with the steering wheels on the right side.
It's not easily for our driver, but the Palestinians in any time learning and doing the best for our population.
Medical aid was delivered to Al-Shifa Hospital, but how and when to distribute the other donated goods has not yet been decided. Political analyst Muhammad Abu Sada is thankful for the convoy, but he wonders what is next for Gaza.
Such steps have been done before, like the Free Gaza movement when they were breaking the siege from the sea. But the problem is that nothing changes. Everything stays as it is the same.
Gaza is still a land under siege. A nearly 2-year-old blockade imposed by the Israeli government as a sanction against Hamas is still in effect. It is highly unlikely that the Lifeline for Gaza convoy will have a major impact on the blockade. But as Mohammed Al-Manuma said goodbye to his new friends, who he now refers to as family, he was proud to be part of such an extraordinary effort with so many ordinary people. Todd Bear, Al Jazeera, Gaza City.
But how is the siege affecting the ordinary people of Gaza? Well, since the blockade came into force almost 2 years ago, severely disrupting supply lines, 40,000 people have lost their jobs. Almost all industry has collapsed, and the number of Gazans needing food aid has risen from 63 to 80%. Well, much of the media attention has focused on 2 of the main crossings into the territory, Erez and Rafah, through which the aid convoy passed this week. Yet there are actually 4 other crossings into Gaza, including Karni in the northeast. And until the Israeli blockade came into force, this was the main route for goods moving in and out of Gaza. But it's a different story today. And joining us now from the Karni crossing is our correspondent, Todd Bear. Todd, as we saw in your report, a lot of fanfare, a huge spectacle at Rafah as that convoy came in. But will the aid have a lasting positive effect on the people of Gaza?
Well, Imran, one of the big questions right now is how will the aid be distributed, when will it be distributed, and will it actually reach the people who need it most? We're talking about more than $1 million in humanitarian aid, everything from medicine to food to blankets to clothing. And although the people here are very appreciative for the effort, some 300 volunteers who traveled so far to deliver so much, the reality on the ground here, right here at the Karni crossing point with Israel, you can see the gates are closed. The reality here on the ground when it comes to the Israeli blockade is that much more than $1 million in humanitarian aid will be needed to help the 1.5 million residents of the Gaza Strip. Now, the Lifeline for Gaza convoy was the brainchild of British Member of Parliament George Galloway. And just after the convoy crossed the Rafah border into the Gaza Strip, I had a chance to sit down with Galloway, and this is some of what he told us. Mr. Galloway, thanks for taking the time to talk to us here on Al Jazeera English. Why did you do this?
We wanted to show the people of the Muslim world that the British people were not their enemies. The second reason was the practical one, that as a result of our convoy, some child tonight has a nappy to wear. Some family tonight has a few tins of food. And third, final objective was to show people that this can be done, and that a Viva Palestina convoy can come from your country too, and ought to. When we crossed the border into Palestine, well, you saw it yourself. The welcome was simply amazing. In just 4 weeks, hundreds of communities all over England, some in Scotland, some in Wales, some in Ireland, but mainly in England, had gathered this enormous fleet of vehicles, which when we left London was 110 vehicles long. That's a 1-mile convoy. Its value was more than £1 million. And the convoy doubled by the time we reached Egypt, thanks to the supplement of the Libyan Gaddafi Foundation, a non-government organization in Libya. And it was quite a sight to behold.
What is your response to some of the criticism? I mean, I think in the London papers, somebody named it the Kiss-Ass Carnival, or, you know, this is just another ploy by Galloway to get more attention. What is your response to that?
Well, it's a funny way to get attention. We're sitting here and an Israeli rocket might come through the window any minute. If every crossing, every sea lane is jammed with people trying to get aid through to the Palestinian people, those who are maintaining the siege will not indefinitely be able to do so. I hope that on this Palestine question, we can make some real progress in the next few years. And you know, you may later tell me I've been foolishly optimistic. I have some hopes that that will be done, and I've been fighting this Palestinian cause for 35 years, but I've never been more hopeful than I am right at this moment. Interesting interview there, Todd. As you mentioned to us a little bit earlier on, the Karni crossing behind you is closed, which is vital for the Palestinians in Gaza. Amid all of these isolated attempts to break the blockade, on the political level, are we any closer to seeing the blockade eased or even lifted?
Well, since I've been on the ground here, Imran, for the last 4 weeks, I have seen leaders from all over the world visit Gaza to see the destruction for themselves. Everyone from former British Prime Minister Tony Blair and now President of the Quartet to Javier Solana of the EU, to U.S. Senator John Kerry, who's president or head of the U.S. Foreign Relations Committee. All of them called for the lifting of the blockade. Even U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, in her recent visit to the West Bank, called for the lifting of the blockade. But the Israeli government has made it clear that the blockade will remain in effect until a lasting ceasefire can be agreed upon with Hamas. And the sticking point between the two parties, the Israelis and Hamas, is the release of the Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit, who was taken in a cross-border raid in 2006. Hamas has made it clear that the release of Gilad Shalit will not be part of any ceasefire negotiation. So right now, the two sides are at a sticking point over Shalit, and while that goes on, the blockade remains in effect, and the 1.5 million residents of the Gaza Strip remain to be cut off from the outside world.
Todd Baer, thanks ever so much for that. After the break, we'll be meeting an Israeli activist fighting to break the siege using animation. And in our latest insight into Gazan family life, we meet a fisherman struggling to stay afloat in the midst of a maritime blockade. Stay with us.